FDI to set record high this year. Real estate poised for a solid 2016. Hello, this is Ling Heng from Hanoi and welcome to another episode of East Line brought to you by VTV International. As usual, we'll start the show with several highlights in the economic and business scene in Vietnam for the past week. Oil prices have fallen below $35 per barrel, hitting a new 13-year low. The oil industry is expected to see negative outcomes during this time. Many firms have cut jobs, costs, and quantities in order to stabilize their financial state. Year-end bonuses were also reduced by as much as 95%. According to a Petro-Vietnam representative, every $1 reduction in global oil prices results in a loss of $240 million in revenue based on current production capacity. Oil prices are expected to drop to $20 per barrel, which could affect the national budget. Foreign direct investment, or FDI, to Vietnam is expected to hit a record high this year, exceeding the record $23 billion in 2015. Since early 2016, there have been a number of newly registered FDI projects with an investment capital of $150 million. Many other investment projects amounting to billions of US dollars will also be implemented in the months ahead. This is attributable to favorable conditions that Vietnam offers multinational corporations and small and medium-sized enterprises. 90% of tariff lines have been cut to 0% following a number of free trade agreements Vietnam had signed. Vietnam's stock market outperformed a number of developed global markets in terms of foreign investment last year, according to Finance Minister Đinh Tiến Dũng. Overseas investment in the market rose by 6.1%, while Indonesia and Thailand saw drops of about 15%, followed by India and Malaysia 5%, the UK 2.3%, and the United States 2.23%. Capitalization of Vietnam's stock market totaled $58.8 billion, equal to 34.5% of its gross domestic product, an increase of 17% from 2014. The country attracted $13.3 billion in capital through the market. The securities market stayed stable in 2015, but remained vulnerable to fluctuations in the global market, especially foreign currencies. Some commercial banks have increased interest rates on local currency deposits to meet rising capital demands towards the end of the lunar year. Interest rates increased from 0.2% to 0.8% per year. Some banks are also offering promotional programs to attract deposits. Banks expect that the increase will help them balance their capital source and meet year-end lending demands through more deposits. Besides deposits, banks are borrowing from each other. Figures from the State Bank of Vietnam revealed. In the last week of December 2015, total transaction turnover in the interbank market reached $7.1 billion, up $1.45 billion from the previous week. The new Decree 135 will allow businesses that make profits for 5 consecutive years to invest indirectly abroad. Indirect investments include purchases and sales of stocks, valuable papers, or investment through securities investment funds. According to the decree, subjects allowed to invest abroad are stock companies, fund management companies, insurance businesses, commercial banks, and the State Capital Investment Corporation. Subjects must also fully comply with their financial obligations by the state. The decree will come into effect from February 15th. The General Department of Taxation held a conference on tax challenges of the digital economy in Hanoi on Tuesday. The event also drew the participation of representatives from the Ministry of Public Security, the Ministry of Industry and Trade, and the State Bank of Vietnam. Experts discussed a number of issues, such as the legality and tax obligations related to app-based taxi service Uber, online advertising services offered by Google and Facebook, and the provision of applications and games through Apple's and Google's app markets on mobile devices. They also discussed solutions to provide better tax management in the field of e-commerce and to combat tax evasion. Those are several headlines in the economic scene for the past week. Up next, we'll talk about the main drivers behind real estate market's recovery in 2015 and prospects for the market in 2016 in our crosstalk. 2015 saw a remarkable bounce back in Vietnam's realty market with rising number of successful property transactions and declining unsold inventories. FDI coming into the sector reached $2.32 billion US, nearly double year on year and ranking third among the sectors that attracted FDI in 2015. So what were the main drivers behind this bounce back in 2015 and how is the market entering the year 2016? Let's delve into these questions with Ms. Hoài An, Director of Professional Services at the property advisory company CBRE Vietnam. Thank you very much for being here with us today. First, let's take a look at the following report. When Vietnam's real estate market bounced back in 2015, DTJ Real Estate Company recorded a 50% increase in its transactions, the highlight of which was in the high-end segment.
So với những năm trước thì cái phần cao cấp chỉ chiếm độ khoảng 10 đến 15%, nhưng mà năm 2015 thì cái như là cái phân khúc cao cấp như là cái bất động sản nghỉ dưỡng hoặc là cái nhà thương mại cao cấp thì đã tăng lên chiếm doanh số khoảng trên 50%. Thì đấy cũng là một cái tín hiệu rất là tốt, đảm bảo về cái hoạt động doanh số.
For STDA Real Estate Supermart System, mid to high-end properties also soared in 2015 with strong launches, positive sales volumes and recovering prices.
Năm 2015 ấy thì số lượng giao dịch dồn nhiều vào phân khúc trung và cao cấp hơn. Và chúng tôi cũng nghĩ rằng đây nó là một cái điều tất yếu thôi, bởi vì hiện tại cái nền kinh tế của chúng ta GDP năm vừa rồi được phát triển rất là tốt. Ngoài ra thì các cái chính sách hỗ trợ của nhà nước, ví dụ như là hạn mức tín dụng cũng như là một số các chính sách về luật kinh doanh bất động sản sửa đổi áp dụng từ mùng 1 tháng 7 thì cũng đã thúc đẩy người dân có cái quyết định mua hàng một cách nhanh chóng hơn và tháo gỡ được cái giải pháp về tài chính cho họ.
Unsold inventories decreased by over $3.3 billion US in 2015, down 58% year on year. Transactions increased by 50% and the number of newly established real estate firms jumped up by nearly 80%. More readily available credit was channeled into the market.
Các ngân hàng đều đưa ra các chính sách khá hấp dẫn cho khách hàng mua nhà. Rồi là cho chủ đầu tư, tài trợ chủ đầu tư thông qua là chính sách ân hạn lãi suất, ân hạn thời gian và ân hạn lãi suất. Cho nên là cái kích thích được cái nhu cầu tiêu dùng của mọi người.
Better legislation, including the real estate business law, has also helped restructure the market in a more professional way.
Tập trung để tháo gỡ khó khăn cho thị trường bất động sản bằng những cái giải pháp nhưng mà không cần đến vốn ngân sách. Trong đó tập trung để tái cấu trúc lại cái thị trường bất động sản, tái cấu trúc lại các sản phẩm bất động sản nhằm đa dạng hóa các sản phẩm bất động sản để mọi người dân đều được có những sản phẩm phù hợp với khả năng thanh toán của mình mà khắc phục được cái lệch pha cung cầu và do đó thị trường bất động sản đã được phục hồi rất tích cực.
Real estate attracted about $2.32 billion US in FDI in 2015, ranking third among sectors that received FDI. This figure shows the attractiveness of the sector, which should remain the case for the near future. In your opinion, which indicators demonstrated the strong recovery of the real estate market in 2015?
In 2015, at CBRE, we saw strong recovery across sectors, across the board, from residential, commercial, hospitality, in terms of new supply released into the market, new sales volumes, as well as price growth, especially compared to the period of 2011 to 2014. Specifically, in terms of residential market, we saw a sharp increase in terms of new apartments launched in major cities, including Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City. The volume of new launched units increased by about 70%, 80% in each of these cities, and so have the sales volumes. Office market also saw improved occupancy, high net absorption, and even in Ho Chi Minh City, we started to see rental rates to increase. Also in retail sector, we saw strong interest from foreign retailers. Expansion activity and M&A activity was exciting and busy during the year. For hospitality, we also saw increased interest from foreign investor groups that started acquiring assets, hospitality assets, resorts, and there have been signs that new developments might be started in the next 1 or 2 years.
Could you elaborate more on the changing news in the economy that affected the realty market in 2015?
So 2015 was considered to be the start of a new cycle for the real estate market in Vietnam. And the strong growth of the 2015 was also fostered, supported by a number of factors, including the macro conditions, strong GDP growth, 6.8% for the whole year for Vietnam. And at the same time, we have a relatively low interest rate environment, which we can say probably lowest level for the past 10 years, which was supported by low inflation, low CPI level. So the low inflation level in 15 was a very good condition that supported both investment as well as consumption. For investment, property channel is one of the most preferred channel of investment for Vietnamese people. So when the macro conditions improved in 2015, the property market also benefited as well.
According to Ho Chi Minh City Real Estate Association, Vietnamese enterprises took the lead in merger and acquisition activities in Vietnam's real estate sector last year, and they played a very important role in handling bad debt and inventories in the sector. What's your view on this?
Over the past 10 years, of all M&A activity, or transactions that we record of, at least 50% was by or between Vietnamese local enterprises. This is understandable because for the Vietnam property market, the local companies can have better understanding of the local market practice, more familiar with the market practice. The property market only recently opened up to further investment from foreign investment. Specifically, only since July 2015, we started to have new regulation, the new housing law, real estate business law, as well as the housing law that allows foreigners to buy homes in Vietnam. So the Vietnam property market is still largely dominated by local companies.
Mm-hmm. FDI coming into the sector reached $2.32 billion last year, making the sector rank third among the sectors that attracted FDI. How do you think about these figures?
Real estate only accounts for about more or less 10% of total FDI into Vietnam. And comparing to the last real estate cycle, the period 2007 and 2010, when real estate sector accounted for between 30% to 50%. So today, FDI into Vietnam more focuses on manufacturing. However, in terms of absolute values, real estate FDI into real estate investment has increased since 2011 from less than $1 billion to today close to $2.5 billion. So today it's positive. And also investment into manufacturing, although manufacturing today is still the focus of foreign direct investment, but real estate sector still benefits from this type of investment because companies who look to establish their manufacturing facilities here would also have the demand for office space for manufacturing facilities, as well as generate demand for accommodation and housing.
So do you think that the sector has received a sufficient funding or capital investment?
Managing credit growth is a complicated task. And in our opinion, the government has been quite successful in providing credit to the real estate market during the past 2 years, 14 and 15, which is demonstrated through the large new supply, new volume, very impressive growth in terms of new launch and also new sales as well. However, to the government, it is equally important to provide credit to the market and also important to make sure credit is not excessive to avoid quick increases in supply as well as in price growth, which could lead to a bubble or to overheat. We have seen over the past 2-3 years, there is a package of 30 trillion dong credit package to the real estate market, which was first released in 2013, at the beginning of 2013. Today, according to the data that we got, about 50% of the package has been disbursed. This credit package came into the market at a time when the market saw a lot of difficulties. So it had a lot of impact to the market in a good way. That to communicate to the market that the government is still here to support the market.
With the macroeconomy gaining momentum, Vietnam's property market is poised for a solid 2016 with increased FDI flow and soaring transactions. However, several risks remain in the market that investors, developers and buyers should be aware of.
There is a risk of oversupply in some sectors. The residential, there's a lot of product coming to the market, so buyers, do need to be careful what they're investing into and what their long-term, investment motivations are. Again, with the office sector, there's a lot of supply coming to the market.
Khi có nhiều hàng hóa quá thì khách hàng rất dễ bị dao động. Và cái thị trường diễn biến tương đối là phức tạp. Vì vậy chúng tôi muốn có một cái yếu tố cố định ở đây, đó là cái việc đưa ra được một cái concept sản phẩm rất phù hợp với cả khách hàng và đào tạo một cái đội ngũ sale rất là chuyên nghiệp để mà tập trung phục vụ những các chủ đầu tư chiến lược và các tệp khách hàng chiến lược.
Targeting end users or real buyers or those that have real needs to purchase and use properties has been the priority of real estate distributors this year. This is to prevent a price bubble, the result of holding activities as in the past.
Mặc dù thị trường tăng hay giảm thì chúng tôi vẫn duy trì và hướng tới cái khách hàng thực. Ví dụ như là các cái sản phẩm như là cái chung cư để cho người sử dụng, và cái sử dụng thì người tiêu dùng luôn luôn có nhu cầu. Thì còn nếu mà cái chỉ vào cái phân khúc cao cấp hoặc là đầu tư thì có thể nền kinh tế tốt thì cái nhu cầu gia tăng, nhưng mà cái lúc mà thị trường suy giảm thì sẽ rất là khó khăn.
The outlook this year remains optimistic, driven by economic integration and open policies. Foreigners and overseas Vietnamese have again taken an interest in the market, following the issuance of the amended housing law and real estate business law last year. Could you elaborate on the new laws and regulations that will affect the realty market in 2016?
As we all know, in 2015, there were 2 new laws that affect the property market came into effect, including the new housing law and the new real estate business law. And because of its relatively short time coming until today, only half a year until today, so we expect in 2016 we will see the full impact of these 2 new regulations, which include several important key changes, and specifically the foreign housing ownership. That means foreigners can now be allowed to buy homes in Vietnam. And technically, foreigners can buy homes in Vietnam, but because the regulation is still relatively new, so only this year we will expect to see the real implementation, the real buyers, the real foreign buyers that actually buy homes and probably actually move in the houses that they buy.
Which monetary policies won't have an impact on the realty market this year?
Usually the property market is under the impact of credit supply and interest rate environment, and to some extent Forex. 2015, we had a relatively good year in terms of credit growth. At the end of the year, according to the State Bank of Vietnam, credit growth was recorded at 18%, which is significantly higher than the average of 12 to 14% of the period 2011 to 2015 to 2014. So the 18 growth is very important. which we have seen a very strong year for the real estate market in terms of growth in supply and interest from buyers as well. And interest rate at the same time was maintained at a very moderate and attractive level, and probably lowest in the last 10 years, which is very good supporting condition for both developers and buyers as well. In terms of forex, in 15, the Vietnam dong lost about 5% of its value, and we expect probably further depreciation between 5 to 7% in 16. However, the Vietnam property market is still largely dominated by local players, both developers and buyers as well. So forex is only one factor that can affect the property market. And even when we have a relatively weak currency, that might be a good condition for foreign buyers or foreign investors to come to invest into Vietnam now that we have very we have cheap prices of property assets. And also, real estate market and properties is usually a good investment channel throughout, even difficult period of time, because it has a holding value. So even when there's a lot of volatility in the monetary markets, in the currency markets, gold prices, oil prices, and property is probably still a relatively good channel investment.
CBRE's latest report on Vietnam's realty market is titled "Be Fearless, Not Foolish." Could you explain the message behind this?
Right, that's a very good question. So last week, CBRE hosted a seminar, an outlook seminar on the Vietnam property market 2016 with the title of "Be Fearless, Not Foolish." And on the final note of the seminar, we posted a picture of the cigarettes with a government warning of its health risks. And in our view, investing in property probably needs to come with a warning as well. And so be fearless, not foolish, that means be fearless in investing, but at the same time, you need to be aware of all the risks so your investment will not end up being foolish.
So could you elaborate on the risks and warnings that investors in this field should be aware of?
We have seen the last cycle, there was a bubble when prices increased very quickly. At some point, prices could increase up to 30-40% per year. And apparently that type of growth could not be sustainable. And after the period of time, prices went down. And a lot of people lost money, investment got hurt. And for this time, we don't want to make the same mistake. But in any investment scenario, in any investment market, there are risks. There are risks from supply and demand. In Vietnam, for example, we have seen quick increases in terms of supply, and we expect to see further increases in supply in the course of the next 2 years or so. So when there's a lot of supply released, there's always the risk of competition of newer supply that could compete against the older supply, and prices of the previous launches might fall because of the new supply coming up. And in terms of demand, when supply increases too quickly, demand might not be able to catch up as quickly, and that's in terms of fundamentals. And in 16, we also see risks in terms of global and regional movement as well. With there's a lot of volatility in the global markets at the moment, such as the Chinese economic slowdown, as well as oil prices getting to the record low.
Now, given the volatility of the global market, as you just mentioned, how can Vietnam's deeper integration into the global and regional markets affect its realty sector in 2016?
There are pros and cons of integration. Of course, with integration, we expect to see more investment, and that's always a pros of being further integrated into the global and regional economy. We definitely expect to see more investment, especially into the manufacturing sector, but also into the real estate sector as well, across residential market, office, retail. We probably expect to see more retailer groups, international retailer groups that come to enter the market and expand in Vietnam. At the same time, with the more integration, that means we would have higher trade activity with other countries. So that means our currency could be more easily impacted by the currency movements in the global markets, and with the fluctuation in currency that might affect interest rate level in Vietnam as well, which would ultimately affect the different investment channels.
Mm-hmm. So how do you think about the merger and acquisition activities in the sector in 2016?
In 2016, we probably expect another busy year of M&A activity with more investors looking to acquire development sites as well as acquiring income-producing assets. And especially, we expect to see more retailer groups to enter Vietnam, especially in the F&B sector, in supermarket sector, convenience store, as well as in fast fashion as well. Demand for income-producing assets remains strong among foreign investors, especially institutional investors. However, there remains a lack of investable stock of income-producing assets in Vietnam, and that might lead to another trend of developing new commercial assets in the major cities, Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, especially in prime locations. One barrier is that there's still a discrepancy between buyers and sellers, especially between international buyers and local sellers in terms of pricing and valuation, that might make it take longer to close the transaction.
Once again, thank you very much for spending your time with us in our show today. Real estate is believed to be among the sectors that benefit the most from Vietnam's deeper integration into the global and regional markets. Given the positive macroeconomic outlook coupled with a more transparent and comprehensive legal framework set out by the new law on housing and the new law on real estate business, the sector is expected to receive more FDI, witness more successful transactions. And that's all we have for this edition of Eastline. Thank you very much for being with us. You can rewatch our show at vtv4.vn or youtube.com/vtv4go. And goodbye for now.